Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Andrew. Before I start this video, I want to get through a couple things. So as you can see, I do have my headset and mic on. I gave those up fairly quickly because I realized my webcam has a better audio recording quality than this headset does. However, someone has decided to throw a party and there's some music going on in the background that unfortunately my webcam was picking up very clearly. I did a little bit of testing and it turns out that this mic on my headset does not pick it up as easily, so unfortunately the quality is not going to be as good and there's going to be a little bit of background white noise in the video, but I'm hoping that it will not pick up the music, and if it does, it won't be distinct enough that anyone could claim a copyright. I'm filming this on Good Friday. It's been a crazy couple of weeks and in my life. I talk about that a little bit in my coffee thoughts video that I made. I'm not sure the order of when these are coming out. I'm just filming them all at once. I'll be editing them and then I'll decide what order they go in. I think I'll put coffee thoughts on Monday, but I'm not entirely sure, so we'll have to wait and see. So the good and the bad of the Bible, and specifically slavery. Before I get into that, I do want to say that I respect your beliefs, no matter what they are, when it comes to religion, whether you believe in one God, whether you believe in no gods, whether you believe in many gods, or even all the gods. To me, I don't lose respect over someone because of what they believe in. I just ask that if you want your beliefs to be respected, please respect other people's beliefs as hard as you wish yours to be. I have no problem with people, believing what you believe. I have no problem even talking to people about what they believe. I only have a problem when you are telling me how I have to believe because, you believe something and you know you're right. I just will say this, beliefs are beliefs, they're not right or wrong, they're just beliefs. I was originally planning to go and do a deep dive into this topic and make a bunch of videos. I was going to do, probably over the span of like 1-2 weeks, do a bunch of videos on this topic because it is a fairly wide topic. There's a lot of nuance, and it's a topic that interests me. As part of taking history at university, I took a couple classes in classical history, which is essentially ancient Greek and ancient Roman history with a bit of ancient Egyptian sprinkled in there as well. But I was going to get very technical. I was going to look at specific Bible verses. I was going to even go into language breakdown of what the term slave in the Bibles actually meant. I don't think most people would be interested in such a deep dive. I mean, it would be cool for me, but I already kind of know that information, and I did all that research for that information. So I didn't really. I learned a couple things. I knew the general gist, as it were, of most of it. I will say, with most things in life, this topic is not black and white. It's rather some mix of gray. In other words, a mix of good and bad. There are good things when it comes to discussing slavery in the Bible. There are bad things as well. And I think that's the case with most issues. Some not so much. I mean, harking back to some of my arguments when it comes to... I can even see... I can see the other side of the argument when it comes to the whole, we have to save your soul compared to your actual life when it comes to the AIDS epidemic. I don't like that argument. Personally, I only believe we have this life, so why would you sacrifice something for a possibility when you know this is actually something that you have? That would be my argument against that. The one I do not think is black and white at all is the molestation of children within the church, and the cover-up especially. I think that one is very, very black. But most things in life, like I say, are a gray, a mix of good and bad. So I will point out that slavery existed long before the Bible and the Mosaic laws were given to the Israelites. The Bible didn't start slavery, unfortunately, nor did it end it. Instead, it was a way to regulate slavery, and in fact, probably make it a little bit better for slaves for the slaves of the time. But I'll get into that a little later. So, when looking at the Bible, there are two forms of slaves. The first is kind of like a debt slave or a bondservant. So basically, you would purchase something kind of on a credit, where you'd have to like pay it back later. But sometimes you couldn't pay that back, and a way to pay off that debt was to work for that person and become their quote-unquote slave servant. It is kind of an in-between thing. You are kind of their slave, but you're also kind of their servant. It's like it has a different connotation than it would today. It's a lot like indentured servitude. Maybe a little harsher than that, but that's if you use that as an idea, it's basically a good example. Now, the maximum that person could work as a slave was for 6 years. In the 7th year, you're freed with all of your debts considered paid in full. And as you go further into the Mosaic laws, into the 5 books, in the first 5 books in the Old Testament, the master or the owner that you were paying off was supposed to give you certain items as to help you get on your feet after you'd work for them, because like say you'd work for them for 7 years, you hadn't built up anything for yourself, and so they were supposed to give you stuff to kind of help you on your way so that you wouldn't just fall back into that exact same position once again. Now, the second type is the one that we consider more like slave today, and those were gained mainly through war conquest. Now, that being said, I do want to point out that slavery in ancient Roman times, times more of the New Testament, were not based on race. It was more based on social status. So either like you were conquered by the Roman Empire and you had like no status, and so you were put into slavery, or you were poor, which meant you had very little status and you owed money that you couldn't pay and become an indentured servant, like I said, for the first category. So what does the Bible specifically say about slavery? Well, in the Old Testament, it outlaws trafficking and kidnapping free people and making them slaves. So that's a good thing, obviously. We don't want you to be able to kidnap someone and throw them into slavery or sell them and make money off of them. It also says that no Israelite could enslave another Israelite. Again, that's a good thing. You never want to enslave your own people. Not always the case, but in most cases that's a fairly common thing when it comes to slavery. When I say your own people, I mean like your own tribe or your own clan, especially if we're talking about slavery that happened in Africa or for African slaves. So if a slave fled and evaded their master, you were not supposed to send them back. You were supposed to welcome them, but not send them back. And if a slave was maimed by a master, that slave was to be set free as compensation. So if there was significant damage to that slave after being beaten by their master, such as they lost an eye, they lost an arm or a hand, etc., they were supposed to be compensated by being freed with all debts owed. Now, I think that one is talking specifically about the first type of slave that I mentioned, the debt slave, but I'm not entirely sure. No one seems to have much of a consensus on whether it means all slavery or just that. And also, slaves had the right to redress, which is an interesting idea. I mean, it's a great idea in my opinion. I'm going to talk about how realistic it was that they actually had that right, or whether it just kind of was like, oh yeah, they have that right, later on